Yo, what's up? Welcome to the Oddity Report. I'm your host, Denoda.
And I'm Tua.
Hmm, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Listen, you think back to like when you were younger. You always got older people who's trying to help steer and direct your life path, and always got some advice that they would desire to give you because they feel as if it's important. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just gotta have this information.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't put this off for any length of time.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the advice, like I think about, okay, the person meant well, but was it really like effective, or like was it meaningful advice? Knowing what I know now, what would I make of the advice that was given to me when I was younger?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about when you were younger, like what did you have, like have you ever reflected on some of the advice that you were given when you were younger? And again, don't go in yet in terms of what that advice was,
Mm-hmm.
but just in terms of have you went through the distillation process?
I have because when you're younger and you are given advice, you think that you should follow it,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't realize until you've had certain years of experience that someone's advice is predicated on their own life experience.
Okay,
So it's kind of their advice is narrow in scope because it's very much based on their life experience. And you don't know that
that's a
when
good
you're
point.
younger because you're just thinking, oh, so and so is so wise.
Mm-hmm.
They live through X, Y, and Z. They have to know what they're talking about.
But a lot of the advice is wise and meaningful. But I take your point, and it's valid, and that it's so uniquely tailored. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for me, one of the things I think about is when I was younger, like I used to be the paper boy, right? You create these unique opportunities when you're younger,
Mm-hmm.
and you would get people constantly telling me like, save your money,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it sounds generically good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like it's the that advice was devoid of context
Right.
because the me looking back retrospectively, the advice I think would have been more effective and meaningful would have been budget your money.
Yeah.
Understand like the nuances of being able to control money and take care of all of your obligations and duties. Like
Yeah.
making sure like you organize that in some type of structural way as opposed to just save your money because like it's ambiguous. Like what are you saving your money for?
Right. And it also kind of sounds like don't spend any of your money
It
when someone
does.
says save your
Yes,
money,
one hundred
right?
percent.
Yeah.
So you're saving money, but you really don't have an objective,
Mm-hmm.
and then all it takes is like some type of commercial on television, some
Mm-hmm.
marketing guru, right, to get you. And it's like, okay, here's a perfect thing to um waste your money on.
Right.
So it should be, how do you budget your money?
Right. I
Can,
agree.
so I would say that will be one of them. What comes to mind for you?
I think for me, oh, I have a perfect little antidote to share. Um, I I'm one of those typical New Yorkers that I have a license, but I don't drive.
Okay.
And there used to be a program in New York. It's no longer where there were these little smart cars. You ever seen those cars that looks like you can put it in your pocket?
Yeah.
So they had these little
You talking
smart
about little
cars.
like toy cars?
They're actual vehicles that you can drive, but they're two seaters only. You probably see them on the street.
You
Very
said you put
tiny.
them in your pocket.
They just look so small. It's
Oh, you
as
feel as if,
if
okay,
exactly,
continue.
exactly. So at the time when this program existed, they used to be in my area,
Okay.
and I was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for me to drive more
Mm-hmm.
because this car is readily available in the area that I lived,
Okay.
and you just pay like it's like a little program where you pay XYZ dollars for every minute, or there's like plans where you can rent out the car for the weekend, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
So I said, easy breezy way for me to just get more comfortable driving
Mm-hmm.
by using these little car to goes. And I made the mistake, and I say mistake, of sharing it with one of my cousins. who's
Mm.
kind of like a big brother to me.
Okay.
He goes, "That's a terrible idea.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that if I was you."
What was his
He
rationale?
didn't give me a rationale, and I didn't ask.
Okay.
And it was just what I needed to hear, because it reactivated, I should say, that fear in me that stops me from driving in general.
Okay.
To have someone say, I'm saying, "Oh, here's what I want to do to drive more, to get over my fear, yada yada yada. Here's a program, yada yada yada." And to have someone say, "That's a terrible idea, you shouldn't do that," and not give me any alternative,
No,
not explain
100%.
why it's a terrible idea, and it's like, well, I have bad ideas?
Yeah.
Does he mean I'm going to get into an accident?
No, that's a valid one.
Right?
And oftentimes when you think about advice, like the bad advice is not for the purposes of condemning the individual who is rendering the advice,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
We're separating between the advice and we're just dealing with the advice. That's it. It has
Yes.
nothing to do with people.
Yes.
Because oftentimes, like, they come from the people like I love and I respect and honor the most.
Exactly. Yes.
But sometimes the advice isn't limited to, like, because look, advice could be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it'd be foolish of us to just sit here and say, to be beyond advice. I mean, that is a foolish person,
Mm-hmm.
because some advice can certainly serve you well.
Yeah.
But then you get some advice where, like, for example, growing up, it's like, go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Going to college could be a good thing
Mm-hmm.
if whatever it is that you seek to do requires a college education.
Right.
But if it doesn't,
Hmm.
maybe a trade school would be more appropriate. for
True.
you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I just think, like, we have to go beyond this one size fits all.
Right.
Because
Right.
one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
I mean, in some cases, yeah, right? I bought a robe recently.
Oh, tell us more.
Well, not for myself, as a gift.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
And
for you.
it was a one size fit all.
Okay.
But interestingly enough, it says medium,
Uh-huh.
one size fit all, which
That
is
doesn't make sense.
interesting.
Yeah.
So
So
but
it's not
the
one
point
size fit
being
all.
is that exactly. I mean, that's the only thing that they had.
Mm-hmm.
But the point being is that there may be exceptions to the one size fit all
Right.
in those limited scenarios.
Right. Yeah.
It'll fit you. Maybe not well,
Right. Right.
but it'll fit you.
Right.
And
kinda
go
like,
to college. Ranks among that, like,
Mhm.
automatically. And look, I'm glad that I did,
Mm-hmm.
but perhaps, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to.
Hmm.
Maybe I had to, but I'm saying, but for the advice,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
I will be a divine carpenter.
True. I've seen your skills. You are gifted.
Another one that I think it's interesting. And look, I'll put it out there. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. What comes to mind? I mean, you don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but then that means there's extra trips that you have to make, right? And then how much of the risk can you actually mitigate? Because, I mean, we are talking about, we're assuming for the purposes of this conversation
Mm-hmm.
that the eggs haven't been cooked yet,
Right.
so they're delicate and fragile.
Right. Right.
So you don't want to put them all in one basket, but every trip you make, the more trips you have to make increases the risk factor.
Yes. Yes.
So perhaps, go ahead.
I was going to say, what you're saying makes me think. I think about this all the time, how certain advice the advice you receive can be fear-based, right?
100%.
Because the person is saying, oh, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You may crack a few, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like, let's say you decide to put all your eggs in one basket, whatever that means for you, right?
Okay.
I feel like you're more focused, right, in
Mhm.
not breaking the egg, right? You're super concentrated. You're like, I'm not going to break these eggs. I'm going to be super careful because I'm going to be the best of the best. And rather than diversifying and you're like, oh, I'll win in the aggregate or I'll win in the average.
Okay.
Versus like you put all your attention, all of your focus on that egg with all those baskets. Maybe the alternative, maybe the outcome will be even better had you diversified.
Listen, that's a valid point, but to my way of thinking, I'm of the opinion, so what if you do? I mean, so what if you do? You break a few eggs. So what? Because it's like you almost arresting like your future prospects by way of, responding out of fear. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we evolved as a human species with being able to consider our fear factor. Right. And so our fear is designed to inform, to alert us as to potential risks.
Yes.
But once we are aware of what those risks are, we could conform our conduct accordingly. We could adjust and we could account for those risk factors, but we should never allow for fear to arrest us.
Absolutely. Or someone else's fear.
Yeah, not at all. And that's another big one, right? Because you have it where, look, we're going to contend with whatever it is that we have to in order to manage throughout our daily exercises, whether it's working with clients, whether it's working with colleagues, whether it's interacting with friends and family, right? There is a lot that goes into those relationships, to those interactions. And we cannot never allow ourselves to, when a person express a fear, that we perhaps make ourselves more available so that the person can process their fear. But it's never our duty to adopt those fears.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because once you begin to adopt those fears, now their fears become your limitations.
Right. Can I tell you, going back to my story, I didn't use the car to go after my cousin expressed his, oh, that's a terrible idea. And I believe now it was fear-based. What if she gets into an accident?
Yeah.
She doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah, listen. When we love someone or when people love us, we know the coldness of this world. So oftentimes it's not that we're speaking to their limitations, but it's because we're speaking to experience of this world, not systems that we have perhaps not working the way it should.
Right.
People not being kind and gentle and understanding and loving when you would expect for them like to have some level of compassion.
Yeah.
You don't always have that compassion available. And sadly enough, like people, many have those experiences. And some of us have the capacity to be able to, when we're confronted with those bad moments, to push past them and still assume the best in others.
Right.
But some of y'all, I want to say, but some of us sometimes get stuck.
Yeah.
And don't know how to move past those moments. We gotta move past those moments because all of these moments in the aggregate, they're just fleeting moments.
It's true.
So you always want to be optimistic and find some semblance of hope, because otherwise, like, what are you here for?
Absolutely. I feel like I need a little Denota.
Or what are you there for?
I need a little Denota in my pocket just to remind me of these things every so often, because when you are given those bad advices, it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, he's right.
And look, I think bad advice is one way of describing it, right? It could be well intended, but just erroneous advice, right? There's so many ways that we could describe it.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's advice. And I think, look, the most effective advice is the advice that is solicited. But, again, there's also dynamics where whether you are a sibling or a cousin, a relative of someone, it's like you see a situation where you feel as if like you have some information that if you imparted it to them, that it would help the quality of their life, change the reality of their circumstance.
Right.
But it's like, how do you go about even broaching the conversation or broaching the topic with them? Because just by mere operation of saying, hey, I got some advice, the mentality is like, wait, who told you about this?
Right. Right.
I don't remember having this conversation with you.
Right. My business is on the street.
Man, how you know my business?
Yes.
But if you have important information that you know can
Mhm.
help make people, someone that you love, someone that you know, because if you out here just trying to enrich, impart knowledge to just random people on the street, well,
Mhm.
you a hell of a person.
Hmm.
Because it's just, I mean, I can see so many other useful ways of using that time, using that energy.
Yeah.
But
So
how do you go about it?
I was gonna, you know, what's funny?
What would you
I
suggest?
was gonna ask you the question. How do you be positive, but also give that person the other side of what could possibly go wrong when you're giving someone advice? You don't want to be one-sided, right? You want to have a well-balanced
No, you're gonna be
advice.
one-sided.
You think so?
No, I'm gonna be
There's no way to
one-sided
be balanced in advice.
because you're trying. Look, when someone is, I see from my perspective, in a situation where I have something that's going to help the reality of their circumstance, right?
Mhm.
It's not going to be balanced. It's going to be geared towards helping them out of that circumstance and propel them forward. So the
Yeah.
quality of information is not going to be balanced. It's going to be decisive.
Mm.
But again, it's going to have to be, number one, me having had the discussion with them.
Mhm.
I'm gathering some information so I could be able to be of best help. But
Okay.
I'm just not going to shoot from the hip because I think that's maybe what you were going towards, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what balance
Yeah.
need to come from the exploration of the topic. So
Mhm.
when I'm having a discussion, I need to be making sure that I am asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Because firstly, you got to make sure that you have the information. If you just opining and you don't have any information,
Mhm.
well, you're a fool.
Mhm.
But you have to make sure that you are getting a proper understanding.
So step 1, gather data.
You have to. You have to have a discussion. You
Mhm.
have to make sure that you understand what the individual, whatever their challenges are, you have an understanding of that.
Right. I agree.
But then when you give the advice, when you render the verdict in terms
Mhm.
of what it is that needs to be done, it's going to be decisive.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't be giving advice unless it's decisive.
Yeah.
Because you could truly look, when you think about a physician, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a
Mhm.
lawyer, an
Mhm.
accountant,
Mhm.
they're not there to present balance, they're there to help maintain your interests.
Right.
So the information that they're going to give is going to be consistent
Mhm.
with being able to advance your interests.
Right.
Now, should you be taking advice from everybody?
That's another question. Yeah.
But I think you're not seeking to offend. You should have a respectful relationship with the person where they know where you're coming from.
Right.
I mean, if every time you're having a discussion with someone that you're trying to impart some information and they're getting upset
Hmm.
and mad or they take it offense to it,
Mm.
like maybe you guys aren't as close as you thought you were.
Right. But when you think about it, if someone is asking someone else for advice, that means they respect the person,
100%.
because you're not gonna ask Joe Schmo who you don't know, hey, you think I should turn my arm into a hammer?
No, that's
Because
true.
I want to hammer all the time, and I just feel like one hand is enough. I can just switch one hand to hammer. Like, you're not gonna ask Joe Schmo,
Valid.
right? You're gonna ask someone who you respect, who you think has a certain amount of knowledge. Like, oh, Denoda. I'm gonna ask Denoda about this. I
Yeah.
respect him. He's a smart man.
Listen, but there's another thing too, right? You certainly shouldn't be asking advice of people that you don't respect.
Mhm.
But there's another thing, right?
What's
And maybe I'm guilty of this.
What's that?
But I'll give the advice even if you ain't asked. Am I wrong?
I do take. Okay, I have an opinion about this because sometimes, as a woman,
Okay.
sometimes you just want to have a listening ear. So let's say I'm sharing something with you, right?
Okay.
Just to share, it's bothering me. I need to get it off my chest. I'm not asking for advice. So sometimes for me, if I'm just sharing and someone's like, this is what you should do, I'm like, well, I didn't ask. I did not.
Then why are you talking to me about
I'm
it?
just venting.
Well, you listen, if you come to me, you must want me to tell you something about yourself.
I just have this thing that's burning inside of me that needs to come out.
Well,
and
here's what you
are
need to
it.
do. Here's what you need to do.
But I'm not asking. I'm not saying. I'm not gonna vent and be like,
Then why are you wasting my time?
So you think it's a waste of time?
If you coming to me with your situation and you are venting to me, well, obviously you are in dire need of guidance.
I don't think so. I think what opens the door to advice is, what do you think? Or what do you think I should do?
No,
Then
no,
feel
you
free.
wasting my. Listen, you come to me. You told me here's the problem, and I'm going to, in response, listen and then tell you here's the solution.
But I'm not framing it as a problem, right? I'm framing
So what are you framing it as?
A situation that happened to me.
That's a problem. I mean, if it's a situation that happened to you, but that's a problem.
No, disagree.
Then why do you feel it of any importance that you need to mention it to me later?
Because it's burning.
Bothering you?
Well, yeah, but I'm not asking for.
So if something
advice.
is bothering you, you
Yeah.
don't think that's a problem?
Only if I say, "Hey, what do you think?"
So you have to first prod me by saying, "Hey, it's a problem."
Yes,
So-
absolutely.
Okay. I mean, listen. If you are going through whatever it is, challenges, issues, and you go and have a discussion with someone, what is your purpose in doing so?
I just told you, just venting.
So you want to vent,
Yes.
and you just want that person to listen,
Yes. Now I know I can't do that with you.
and you don't want to tell them. You don't want them to tell you. You don't want them to chime in at all.
I want that to be like, oh, that's tough.
So you want like a pity party.
No, I want empathy.
You want pity.
Should we ask
N-
the dictionary?
Listen.
No, I want empathy.
No, you want sympathy.
I
You
think
want
that's-
pity.
No, I'm not. No one wants to be pitied.
Well,
No
if
one
you
does.
coming to someone with your problems,
It's a situation, not a problem.
you know, play semantics. It's not neither, it's neither. It's not either, it's either. I got you. I mean, listen, the point being is that there's nothing wrong with taking advice. Like, what if the person, because you so hung up on the fact that you didn't solicit the advice, but if the advice is good advice and good for you, then why not take it? Like, why do you have to take issue with the fact that you didn't ask for the advice?
You know why? Because sometimes you don't want to feel like, oh, I need to be fixed by somebody else. Like,
So
am
what if you
fine,
do?
But I don't.
Sometimes you need somebody to tell you what to do. You know, listen, there is a reality. We have come to be like a society where, like, there's people who, you know, they want to pledge that they want to maintain their sovereignty and their agency, and that's good. You want to maintain that, the ability to make decisions. But sometimes there are realities where we have to abdicate that power to someone else. And we do that in many respects, right? When it comes to, for example, another like piece of bad advice, and I think it fits perfectly well within this within the framework is, you can't trust anyone. Listen, the whole world is based upon this trust factor. Like, you do it regardless. Like, you do it without even recognizing that you do it. When someone tells you, oh, don't trust anyone, listen, they are setting you up for failure. You got to learn the power and the ability to discern of individuals who are worthy of it. Right?
Agreed.
You need a system to be able to assess the vivacity of someone's character. When you get on that bus in the morning, you don't know who that man is driving it.
Or woman.
When you get on a train, when you take a plane, you don't know.
Yeah.
Or when you're crossing in the street through the crosswalk and there's an approaching vehicle, you don't know who that person is, if whether or not they're going to obey the stop sign.
Yeah.
So we have a society that's built on trust, and we trust each other in a number of different ways. But we need the ability to, when we're making an assessment. So as I'm walking across the street through the crosswalk and there's a car approaching, I'm making eye contact with the driver so I could communicate that I'm here.
Yeah.
And that he responds back or she responds back in kind, that I see you.
Yeah.
And that you may proceed safely.
Yes.
But there's a trust. Now, if I'm going across the street and I'm looking at the driver and the driver isn't communicating back that he sees me,
Yeah.
well, that ain't the ideal time to
Right.
cross.
Right, exactly. You have to be cautious.
You have to be cautious.
Yes.
And so this notion of, well, you can't trust anyone, well, that's just foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way around that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see, if the other day we observed there was a girl, she had a bike incident.
Yes.
And she hurt herself, and
Yes.
she's okay.
She's okay.
But when we called emergency services on her behalf, right?
Mm-hmm.
She didn't even speak
English.
No. But we sent help, and it was a trust that she had to have had in the system that it would see to it that she would be safe and that she would be okay.
Right.
So we do trust.
You know, I'm not disagreeing, only because my father was one of those people who would say don't trust anybody. But I think there needs to be foundational trust in order for society to operate, but you always should operate cautiously.
Yes, listen. You know, there's an old saying I attribute it to the former president of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
I believe his name was Richard Nixon.
Okay.
Maybe Lyndon B. Johnson is one of the two. He says, trust but verify.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Trust but verify.
Perfect.
So you
phrase.
don't have to do away with trust.
Right.
You want to be able to verify it. So again, analogous to my remarks concerning you're crossing the street in a crosswalk.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's a driver that's approaching.
Right.
You know, when you look at him, you observe that sees you.
Mm-hmm.
He's verifying it by looking back at you.
Right.
Now you may continue to proceed safely.
Right.
But there's always some level of, and you're correct in terms of there are systems or things built into the system to help amplify this trust relationship, because we do have a society, and trust is important, and that's worthy of a topic altogether to itself.
Right. Agreed.
And I think this is a good, stopping point. One last thing.
Yes. Zenoda.
For bad advice that we've gotten, because I don't think this is no way to end the show, but what is some of the good advice that you've gotten?
I think every piece of good advice I've ever had was one based on trust that something good will happen.
Okay.
Rather than fear-based, which I talked about earlier.
Okay.
Like try it out. What's the worst that can happen?
No,
that's
I
the
like
kind
that.
of good advice that I've gotten in the past.
Okay. Well, one of the best advice that I've gotten, I would say, since I was a kid was, it's not enough that you have faith in God, but you also have to have faith in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And being able to have faith in yourself, and when you act on that faith, right, that is a display of your belief in